This KGCT 8 Legal Mind segment is brought to you by AB and Associates Law Firm. From families to business owners, their results speak for themselves. They measure success by the outcomes they achieve for their clients. AB and Associates can be reached at 832-243-1763, or you can learn more by going to ablegal.com. KGCT 8 sat down with our legal expert Izenweni Abi for another Legal Mind segment to discuss estate planning, and Miss Abi provided some very helpful information that can help make estate matter less complicated.
On today's Legal Mind segment, we're going to talk about estate planning, and joining me once again is Miss Abi, a licensed attorney that's going to give us some answers to some of those tough questions. Thank you for joining me again.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Well, so estate planning, there's no shortage of horror stories when it comes to estate issues. So let's talk about why it's important to do that proper planning, that due diligence, and get all of that done up front.
Because you love your family. That's why it's important. You love your family. You have spent time pouring into them, planning for them, taking care of them. This is just one more step of that process.
And what's the important parts of estate planning? You hear, about a trust, you hear about a will, and as I understand it, a will isn't just a will, and a trust isn't just a trust.
Right.
So what are those important parts of estate planning?
So the basic estate plan, you're looking at a will, which gives directions to your family as to what you want them to do with certain assets. Then you're looking at a living will, which gives direction to your family about what you want them to do with your body. Before you pass away, generally, most people will have a power of attorney, financial power of attorney, and medical power of attorney, because sometimes it's not the same person. Some people don't want it to be the same person, which is smart and understandable. And then we have a trust. A trust essentially is sort of creating a bucket or an entity that can hold onto certain assets until one passes, and then someone is assigned to execute on that. The biggest difference between a will and a trust, because this question comes up very often, a will is given instructions. You give the instructions, you draft them. When the person passes away, you take that to the courts. You have to do something else, take that to the courts to eventually get approved and proceed with any sort of transfers that you need to make. A trust, on the other hand, does not have to go through probate. You don't have to go through the courts. The details are there, the assets are there, and the assets are generally named in the name of the trusts. So that's a different mechanism, but they are part of an estate plan.
And does everyone need a will, and does everyone need a trust?
Everyone needs a will. If you have accumulated any sort of assets, if your only assets are, or if your only property is your homestead, maybe not, because if you have a partner that can inherit it or take it on, that's a little different. But if you have any other assets, bank accounts, anything that you want to distribute to your children or to any family members, and you want to be explicit as to the instructions, a will is necessary. Now, does everyone need a trust? Probably not. A trust just comes in depending on how much assets you have, how you want to structure those assets, how you want to distribute those assets. So a trust is sort of another step up from just a will. It gives you more control as to how things are done. A will doesn't give you so much control. It just gives you direction. A trust gives you direction, control.
I guess you really have to look at the size of the estate that you're dealing with, all the complexities, do they have businesses? And let's talk a little bit about who do you put in those key roles like executor and trustee? Who should you put in there and who shouldn't you put in there?
You want to make sure you're putting someone who is, of course, someone that you love, so generally family members, friends, someone that you trust, but you also want to make sure you're putting someone that's capable. What you don't want to do is assign someone with a major responsibility and they're not capable. They will just destroy it, make some mistakes, and cause more issues. So you want to not just base it on emotional, but you want to have a sense of the mental assessment of who is capable of this particular role. It's a major responsibility. Not only do they have to deal with the passing of a loved one, which is a heavy emotional toll to deal with, but they also have to deal with the mental presence and wherewithal to make a decision and make sure they're executing on what the instructions are.
Well, those that would inherit from a trust or from a will, Is it wise during the planning process to bring them all together and go over all the particulars of a will and a trust to try to prevent any future problems?
Absolutely. It is very helpful to give them those instructions verbally as well as providing the written instructions and the written information. It definitely helps if all parties are aware of what's going on and how to proceed and what needs to be done. If they do not do that, you have your written documents, but one could question timing, who was there, were you influenced, maybe you were. So it creates more questions if the family members are not aware of your intention.
And as we've talked about in earlier segments, AI. AI is a factor in so many parts of our life now. So once again, someone could go and use AI to draft some of these documents, but there are pitfalls associated with that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, some pitfalls, once again, when you talk about AI, it's the level of comprehension that's going to go into the process. How much do they understand about your assets? How much do they So if you're going to use AI, you have to be well adept as to what you need and what you have and how you want to structure that for an AI to even know how to draft that. Of course, AI is not going to help you execute on it. You still need a notary person. You need your witnesses as the law requires. But AI does not have a good comprehensive view of what you're hoping to accomplish. You do want to talk to a person. You want to talk to an attorney and get some direction and advice as to how to proceed with your estate.
So using AI, as we know, it's what you input that determines what the output is. And so
Yes.
if you're limited with information, then it's working with that limited information that you've given it.
Absolutely.
And so having personal experience with some estate matters, I learned the hard way that it is very important to have the will and, when necessary, to have a trust to try to prevent some of the problems that could occur in the future. Because something I've learned is that when there's money at stake, it brings out a side of a person that perhaps you would never, ever think existed.
Absolutely. I see it multiple times over. Once there's money at stake, there are assets at stake, investment accounts, businesses, people become very different. Most times it seems almost like an out-of-body experience because they become very, very different. So yes, you want to have your instructions very clear. And AI, even if it can draft certain instructions, it would be very basic. So you can imagine that if someone has spent time in their lives to build a large estate and have funding and investments and accounts, why would you want to have a model that's very simple and provides the most basic perspective on how to manage that? So you do want to be very intentional and put in the same level of effort that it took you to build up your life to providing directions and distribution instructions for your family.
Well, let's talk about the actual documents. Who should have those documents? Where should you keep them?
Once you draft it, I always advise if you still maintain a safe deposit box, put it there. If you don't, I have some family members and people who have the fireproof boxes that they put in their house that has a lock. Generally, you can put that in there and leave it in your home. Just make sure someone knows where it is. Oftentimes, I'll have families that come in and someone has passed away. They know there is a will, but they don't know where it is because their parents never told anybody. So you do want to let your family know where it is. Keep it safe, keep it locked, keep it closed so no one can accuse another person of tampering with it. So it has to be sealed somehow, and make sure that the family is very, they're aware of where to go look for it when the time comes.
And should an executor or a trustee have a copy of that in advance?
No, I don't believe you should give it to anyone in advance. I think the family, you should have it, keep it yourself, keep it somewhere private, but inform somebody or a couple of people as to where to find it.
Okay, and given that this is your area of expertise, what would you tell someone that's procrastinating, that they know good and well they need to get it done, but they're just stalling and procrastinating?
I would say definitely do it as soon as possible. We do not know what's going to happen tomorrow. We have no idea of anyone's, life plans or path. And the way I look at it, you have spent this much time working, saving, buying things, putting things away. Why would you just leave that up to chance? I have some people who come and say, well, it doesn't matter, I'd be dead anyway. I'm like, but you have these people that are relying on you. Why would you not make things easier for them at this particular time when they'll be dealing with a very heavy situation?
Yeah, it's a good way to make a difficult situation even worse.
Absolutely.
So there you have it, some real good practical information, some answers to some really important questions on estate planning. And so thank you once again for joining me on this Legal Minds segment.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
This KGCT 8 Legal Mind segment has been brought to you by AB and Associates Law Firm. From families to business owners, their results speak for themselves. They measure success by the outcomes they achieve for their clients. AB and Associates can be reached at 832-243-1763, or you can learn more by going to ablegal.com.
KGCT 8